Hey guys, insight number 5. So we're into the words of Mormon. Now, Mormon's coming in here as the collator of this book, the Book of Mormon, but this is Words of Mormon, not to be confused with the actual pages in the back here before Moroni, which is also the Book of Mormon. If you look at the chapter headings, you'll see that this is about after Christ, about 385 years after Christ, and the previous books that he's been gathering here finish off at around 130 before Christ, depending on how they were marked down. You can see, and you'll follow that more as you go through and read Mosiah, King Benjamin, and into where Alma turns up and the whole thing in there, which was recorded on the other plates. These are the small plates in Nephi. But you also note that, this is Mormon summing up from the beginning of Nephi, where it was 600 years BC, and it's now 385 AD, so it's about 1,000 years difference. And so that's where he's sitting in his head. He's gone back and read a story, an account of the people, of his ancestors, how they got over to that American continent 1,000 years ago. It's kind of wild, right? He knows that Christ has come because people talked about it, whereas all he's been reading in this and compiling here is that Christ is going to come. So the promise of it, and that's kind of special as well, and we'll get to that. But he starts off saying, "And now I'm Mormon, being about to deliver up the record which I have been making into the hands of my son Moroni." Again, father to son, can trust them. "Behold, I have witnessed almost all the destruction of my people, the Nephites." And he says, "It's many hundred years after the coming of Christ that I deliver these records up in the hands of my son." And he says, "But my God grant that he may survive them, because the destruction of the entire people, but please bless Moroni that he will survive them." And we know he does. So that's really cool. So Mormon sums up why he included Nephi's small plates, saying it pleased him to read all the prophecies of Christ. So let's have a look at that, because that's really nice. In verse 4 and 5 it says, "And the things which are upon these plates pleasing me, because of the prophecies of the coming of Christ, and my fathers knowing that many of them have been fulfilled, yea, and I also know that as many things as have been prophesied concerning us down to this day have been fulfilled, and as many as go beyond this day must surely come to pass. Wherefore I choose these things to finish my record upon them, which remainder of the record I shall take from the plates of Nephi," which were the larger plates of them. So he's summing these all up. Pleased to read of the prophecies of Christ that he, Mormon, has seen come to fruition some 900,000 years later, 900 to 1,000 years later. So these things that were written of Christ will come, Christ will come. He knows Christ came. He's living 385 years after that. So he knows that happened. He also knows then that, and all the other things they said would happen, of this would happen, and this would happen, this would happen. It's like, it's all happened. All the things around Christ's birth that were prophesied happened. The information he's got that was quoted in here from Isaiah, which Nephi taught his people of Isaiah, Mormon knows. And he reads that and is like, hey, that's happened too. But there's also things in there that are going to yet come to fruition, that have happened in our day. And actually yet some more still that are yet to happen. So how exciting is it that he's seen all of this? So he's like, I've seen all that come true. Therefore, I know that the other stuff that was prophesied, that's also going to come true. I haven't seen that yet, so you guys look out for that. So what prophecy have you witnessed being fulfilled that helps you know that others that are prophesied will also be fulfilled? It's interesting. I was thinking just this last conference weekend around all the talk of temples, and how when I was younger, and I think somebody brought this, I can't remember who brought it up. I only watched once so far, so give me a break. And it was early in the morning, talking about, it was one of the apostles. I know when he was in primary, there was like 15, 20 temples or something, and part of getting your primary graduation thing was to memorize all the temples, and that was part of mine. I think there was about 20 temples when I was younger, maybe even slightly less, and that was all there was, and they'd have pictures up of them, and you memorize what they were, and you could tell them, try and do that now, right? So one of the prophecies I've seen fulfilled is that temples will dot the earth. And they were talking about that in great detail. And I was just like, and then I was reading this and thinking about the whole, Mormon got to see a lot of prophecies come true. and he saw that there were more to come true, and how much more faith and confidence he would have had that they would come true, knowing that the ones that he had seen already come to pass. So I was thinking of all these temples that are being announced. 15 more. I mean, like, it was only like 15 when I was a kid, and now there's 15 in one conference. That's incredible. Temples really will dot the earth, and it's no longer going to be, for a lot of us, in 20, 30 years even, it won't be that hard to go to the temple. The thing that will stop us from going to the temple is us, not the distance or the cost. It'll be us. And that's a sadness of its own. But how awesome is it that that one comes true in my lifetime, that I can see that? And I'm not 50 yet. I might look it today, but I'm not. And then I start thinking of all the other things that I've seen and know that have come true. Like Mormon here knew that that the Book of Mormon at the plates were going to come to a prophet in the future, and he was going to be named after his father, and his name would be Joseph. And we covered that, and I can't imagine the freak out that Joseph would have had when he read that. Maybe he didn't have a freak out. I would have been like, oh my gosh, But maybe Joseph was like, I don't know. I wasn't there. To think that I know that came true. Mormon hadn't seen that come true. He'd seen other stuff. He hadn't seen that one. I haven't seen it, but I know it happened because we have the Book of Mormon. So I know that happened. But there's also lots of other things that have come true. And you might not believe in some of them, but maybe have some real faith to look at what has happened and really look at, okay, how does that help me know that these other things will? Because that's pretty cool. Now, verse 18 shows peace can always be obtained. So let's just go and have a look at this. Verse 7 I talked about in the first one, about that wise purpose. Like, I don't know why we're keeping these plates. I'm not sure. Just the Lord told me to do it. And actually, I don't need to know why because the Lord said it. Actually, that's very helpful a lot of times. It can bring us a lot of peace if we let it, which leads in nicely to 18. So he says, wherefore, with the help of these, King Benjamin, by labouring with all the might of his body and the faculty of his whole soul, and also the prophets, did once more establish peace in the land. So we were talking before about this week and how all this ugliness existed, and they really fought in mightiness to persuade them to come unto Christ and to change that. Started with Enos and his soul hungering and trying to change the people and his influence for good. And there were mighty leaders. They really were. And they had a lot of great influence. So peace can always be achieved if you work for it. And verse 18 shows us that. Because if we'd read up to this point, we would like, well, how do we know that King Benjamin did that? And it's like, well, you get to go and to read into Mosiah and find out how King Benjamin did that. How Mosiah did that and how King Benjamin did that. And that's where we're heading next week. So it's very cool. But however much work it takes to obtain peace, you can obtain it. Peace was never seen by Mormon in his life, but he found and obtained personal peace. So what are some ways you can work for personal peace? Because I think in today's world, I don't know that we're going to get complete peace. We might have peace in our neighborhood. We might have peace within our home. So how are we going to get that personal peace? How are we going to learn about Mormon and what he did and the ways he did things and the good influences here that can help us obtain that personal peace? Because that's huge, and that will give us a whole lot more strength to fight Satan in our wrestles before God. It'll help us in our sphere of influence to influence for good and to persuade others to be more Christ-like. It will help us appear more Christ-like because we're at peace. So there's a whole lot of things that tie in this week that are just beautiful over these four short little books. But, most importantly, I really would just love you guys to take on Don't Live a One-Verse Life. Tell us about your story. Write it down. Share it somehow, because what you have to say will help someone else, will be a value, because you all are. So that I know. So have a good week out there. Thanks for joining me this week, guys, and we look forward to getting into Mosiah next week. It's going to get great. All right, bye.